The scream split the air like shattered glass, high, sharp, desperate. A baby's cry, a woman's furious voice, the glint of steel under the kitchen lights. Ivy Collins froze in place, her heart thundering against her ribs. The infant in her arms shrieked in terror as a woman dressed in black advanced, a kitchen knife clutched in her hand. Behind them, a man in an expensive grey suit, hands raised, face pale with disbelief, stumbled into the scene. The luxurious mansion that once smelled of fresh lilies and polished wood now reeked of danger. "Give me the child," the woman hissed, her eyes burning with something far beyond anger. "No," Ivy shouted back, her knuckles white around the baby's tiny body. Her broom fell to the marble floor with a clatter, but her arms stayed firm. "Over my dead body." And in that single moment, caught between fear and resolve, everything shifted. Just hours earlier, Ivy was only the maid, a quiet girl from a working-class neighborhood, unseen by the wealthy, moving silently through corridors with her yellow gloves and bucket. She was the one who wiped the dust from the grand staircase, who scrubbed the kitchen floors until they shone like mirrors, invisible to everyone. Except the crying child. That baby's sobs had called her into a room no one else wanted to enter. His name was Noah Brooks, barely 6 months old, helpless, motherless since birth. His father, Nathaniel Brooks, the owner of this mansion in Charleston, South Carolina, was a man feared in boardrooms and admired in glossy magazines. To the world, Nathaniel was untouchable. But here, behind marble walls and endless silence, he was a widower drowning in guilt, unable to look at his son without remembering the woman he had lost. And that emptiness opened the door for danger. The nanny he trusted had disappeared when the baby needed her most. And into that void stepped Ivy, unexpected, uninvited, cradling Noah, humming a lullaby she barely remembered from her own mother. It should have been nothing, a simple act of kindness, but it was the beginning of everything, because Nathaniel saw what she did, saw how his child quieted, how his son finally slept. And though he would never admit it, something inside him stirred, gratitude, curiosity, a dull flicker of respect for the girl who cleaned his house but had more love in her arms than any of the expensive caretakers he had hired. Yet what Ivy didn't know, what none of them knew, was that someone else had been watching. Someone who once wore Nathaniel's ring, who once planned to be mistress of this very mansion. A woman who vanished when life with a baby no longer suited her, but who returned now with a smile as cold as winter glass. Vivienne Ashford, and Vivienne had no intention of losing Nathaniel again. If she couldn't win his love with promises, she would take it by force, through schemes, through lies, through the child who bore his name. That was the storm about to break. Her fragile maid, a grieving millionaire, a baby whose cries became the spark, and a former lover willing to risk everything, even a crime that could destroy them all. Tonight, their lives will collide in ways no one could imagine. Trust will shatter, secrets will surface, and the line between loyalty and betrayal will blur until only one truth remains. Sometimes, the person you least expect is the one who will risk it all to save you. I'm John Parker, and today's story will touch your heart. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and give your like. It's very important to me. And leave in the comments which city or country you are listening to me from. The cry returned like thunder rolling down an empty hallway. Ivy Collins stiffened, clutching the broom handle tighter. She was meant to be in the East Wing, polishing brass doorknobs that nobody touched, yet the sound pulled her like a rope around her heart. A baby's cry doesn't lie. It was desperate, ragged, the kind of sound that carried hunger, fear, abandonment. Her sneakers squeaked against the marble tiles as she ran toward the nursery at the far end of the corridor. The Brooks mansion was a fortress of glass and stone, perched on the outskirts of Charleston, South Carolina, where magnolias bloomed and old money whispered. But tonight it was hollow. The cry sliced through the silence like a siren. The door was half open. Ivy pushed it wider. What she saw made her stomach twist. Noah Brooks lay in the crib, tiny fists flailing, his cheeks red and wet with tears. The blanket was tangled around him, damp with sweat. An empty bottle lay on the floor beside the rocking chair. His diaper sagged, soaked through. No one else was there. "Oh, sweetheart," Ivy whispered, her voice trembling as she dropped the broom. "What have they done to you?" She reached into the crib, lifting Noah against her chest. He smelled of sour milk and loneliness. She had no right to interfere. Maids didn't cradle their employers' children. But what kind of woman would she be if she turned her back? The memory of her own siblings flashed in her mind. Leah was a baby, wailing when their mother was gone. Maya, only 3, clinging to Ivy's dress while their world collapsed after the accident. Ivy had raised them. She knew this sound. She knew what to do. "Shh, you're safe now," she murmured, bouncing Noah gently. She pulled open the dresser, found diapers stacked neatly, unused. With practiced hands, she changed him, humming under her breath. "You are my sunshine." He quieted slightly, though his sobs still shook his little body. In the kitchen, she warmed a bottle, testing the milk on her wrist. When she offered it, Noah latched with a hunger that broke her heart. His tiny eyes, clear blue like the Carolina sky, looked up at her as though she was the only person in the world. "There you go. That's what you needed, isn't it?" she whispered, rocking him back and forth. Within minutes, his breathing slowed, soft and steady, his eyelids fluttering shut. The door creaked behind her. Ivy turned, nearly dropping the bottle. Nathaniel Brooks stood there. His frame filled the doorway, tall and immaculate in a charcoal suit, his tie loosened, his expression unreadable. His dark hair was slightly mussed, as if he had been pulling at it all evening. "What?" His voice cut like a blade. "Are you doing here?" Heat rushed to Ivy's cheeks. She scrambled to her feet, the bottle slipping from her fingers onto the carpet. I heard him crying. "The nanny wasn't here. So I thought, you thought it was your place?" Nathaniel's jaw clenched. He stepped inside, his gaze flicking to the diaper pail, to the used wipes, to the now peaceful child in her arms. He froze. For the first time in days, Noah wasn't screaming. His son was asleep, safe, content. The weight on Nathaniel's chest shifted, though he tried not to show it. For 6 months, ever since Hannah, his wife, his anchor, died giving birth to Noah, he hadn't been able to hold the boy without feeling guilt like fire in his veins. He had hired the best nannies, paid them fortunes, but none had managed to quiet the storm. Yet this maid, with her cheap sneakers and trembling hands, had done it effortlessly. "Where is Amalia?" Nathaniel's voice was colder now, aimed like a rifle. "I don't know, sir," Ivy whispered, tightening her hold on Noah instinctively. Nathaniel exhaled sharply, fists curling. He turned on his heel and stormed down the stairs. Ivy followed at a distance, clutching Noah close. She found him outside, his shadow long across the glowing pool lights. There, seated on a white wrought-iron bench, was Amalia, the nanny. She laughed into her phone. Her high heels kicked off beside her, sipping a glass of wine. Nathaniel's fury boiled over. My son was crying alone in his crib. His diaper filthy, his bottle empty. "And you were here." Amalia's eyes widened. She fumbled to end the call. I was gone only a minute. He was sleeping." "He was screaming," Nathaniel thundered. "And it wasn't you who answered. It was the maid." His finger stabbed toward Ivy, who stood behind him. Noah still nestled in her arms. "Mr. Brooks, please." "You're fired," he said, his tone flat, final. "Gather your things and leave tonight." Amalia's face went pale. She scrambled inside, leaving behind her glass of wine. Nathaniel turned back toward Ivy. For a moment their eyes met. She braced herself for his anger, but instead his voice was low, almost human. "Thank you." Ivy's lips parted, but no words came. She only nodded, clutching Noah tighter, her heart racing with something she didn't yet dare name. The storm came quietly, on heels that clicked against marble. Wrapped in perfume too sweet to hide the bitterness behind it. 2 weeks had passed since Amalia was dismissed. In her place, Nathaniel hired a new nanny, carefully chosen through an agency that promised the highest standard of care. Cecilia Crane arrived with perfect credentials, pressed uniforms, and a smile so precise it never touched her eyes. She spoke softly, mechanically, like someone trained to please but incapable of warmth. Noah never took to her. The moment Cecilia leaned close, the infant stiffened, his face scrunching as though he sensed something unseen. Ivy noticed first. The baby cried longer, harder, whenever Cecilia held him. But Nathaniel, buried in endless meetings and legal calls, convinced himself it was just adjustment. "He'll learn," he muttered, though his eyes betrayed doubt. It was Ivy who stayed behind, wiping counters, listening from the next room. The muffled whimpers, the strained silence, the eerie way Cecilia never sang, never rocked, never whispered. Just a metronome of routine, feed, change, lay him down, walk away. Still, Nathaniel ignored it. He had bigger battles, or so he thought. Because one evening, as the sunset painted the Charleston sky with streaks of fire, a figure appeared at the wrought iron gates. The guards, hesitant, let her through. They remembered her face. Everyone did, Vivian Ashford. She swept up the driveway in a tailored black dress, diamonds glittering at her ears, her golden hair pinned in a flawless chignon. Her heels clicked like the ticking of a clock as she approached the front door. And when Nathaniel opened it, the years seemed to collapse in a single glance. "Vivian," he said, voice clipped. She smiled, cool and unyielding. "You didn't call." "I wasn't going to. But here I am," she answered, brushing past him into the house. Her perfume lingered in the air, sharp as citrus and smoke. From the kitchen doorway, Ivy froze mid-motion, clutching a rag, her knuckles white. She had never seen beauty so weaponized, nor eyes so piercing. Vivian's gaze swept the room and landed on her. A flicker of disdain passed across her perfect features. And this must be the maid. Her tone carried venom under its silk. Ivy lowered her eyes. "Yes, ma'am." Vivian's heels carried her toward the nursery. She didn't ask. She simply entered as though the house was hers. Cecilia Crane stood at the crib, straight-backed, holding Noah. For the first time that evening, Vivian's smile softened, though it never reached her heart. "Oh, my sweet Noah," she cooed, brushing a manicured finger across his cheek. "I should have been here all along." Nathaniel's jaw tightened. "You forfeited that right." Vivian turned, her eyes sharp. "I forfeited nothing. I left because you couldn't see past your grief, because you clung to a child who stole Hannah from you instead of remembering what you and I once had." The words pierced like glass. Ivy's heart twisted at the cruelty, though she dared not speak. She only stepped back into the shadows, unseen, her stomach churning. Nathaniel's voice dropped. "Leave!" But Vivian only laughed, low and dangerous. "Nathaniel, darling, you can't erase me. We were meant to build this empire together. And I will not stand by while a maid and a second-rate nanny raise the son who should have been mine to claim." The air thickened with silence. Ivy's breath caught. For a moment she thought Nathaniel would break, would let Vivian slip her poison back into his life. But then he turned his face away. "You don't belong here anymore." Vivian's smile sharpened, her lips a thin line. "We'll see about that." She swept from the room, her heels echoing like a threat across the marble floors. Ivy exhaled only when she was gone. But deep inside, unease rooted itself, because she had seen the flicker of understanding, the subtle nod, exchanged between Vivian and Cecilia as their eyes met above the crib. Something unspoken passed between them, and Ivy, though only a maid, felt it in her bones. A storm darker than grief was gathering. Noah wasn't just Nathaniel's child. He was the leverage Vivian needed, and Cecilia was her perfect accomplice. That night, while Nathaniel buried himself in contracts, Ivy sat awake in the servants' quarters, staring at the ceiling. She replayed Vivian's words, her eyes, her smirk, and then Cecilia's chilling silence. Her gut screamed a truth she dared not voice. Vivian hadn't come back for Nathaniel. She had come back for Noah. The house settled into silence, the kind of heavy quiet that pressed against the walls like a secret. Midnight had fallen and most of the mansion slept. Nathaniel was locked away in his office, his desk light glowing faintly through the crack beneath the door. Ivy had finished her chores hours ago, yet something kept her awake, an unease crawling over her skin. She slipped into the hallway, her sneakers soundless against the carpeted floor. The mansion, usually a cold museum of marble and glass, now seemed to breathe with hidden life. The chandeliers above cast ghostly shadows. The baby monitor on the kitchen counter glowed green, carrying Noah's steady breaths from upstairs. Relief washed through her, until a faint murmur drifted from the study. Ivy paused. Nathaniel's office was down the hall, but the sound came not from him. It came from the sitting room beside it. Carefully, she edged closer. Through the crack in the door, she saw Cecilia Crane. The perfect nanny stood stiffly in the lamplight, her back straight, her voice low as she whispered into a phone. "Yes, everything is on schedule. No, he doesn't suspect a thing." Ivy's chest tightened. She leaned closer, holding her breath. "Vivian has secured the papers. Once the handoff is done, no one will question it. The baby will be ours to move, legally or not." She thinks she can break him with this. He'll beg to have her back. Ivy's pulse thundered in her ears. She stumbled back a step, her hand flying to her mouth to stifle a gasp. A sharp noise, Noah's sudden cry from the nursery upstairs, broke the moment. Cecilia stiffened, cutting the call short. She slipped the phone into her pocket and glided toward the staircase with eerie calm. Ivy darted into the shadows, pressing herself against the wall as Cecilia passed. Her expression was unreadable, her footsteps too steady, too rehearsed. Once Cecilia was gone, Ivy rushed toward the office. She wanted to pound on Nathaniel's door, to tell him what she heard. But then she stopped. What proof did she have? A half-heard conversation? If she accused Cecilia and failed, Nathaniel might send her away. And then who would protect Noah? Her hands shook. She retreated to her room, her mind spiraling. Vivienne was planning something far bigger than just a visit. There were papers, documents, legal traps Nathaniel wouldn't see until it was too late. And Cecilia wasn't just a nanny. She was the accomplice, the knife hidden beneath silk gloves. The next morning, Ivy's fears sharpened. Vivienne returned, unannounced, gliding into the mansion as though she owned it. She placed a silver gift bag on the foyer table, her smile polished, her voice syrupy sweet. "For Noah," she said. Inside was a designer rattle and a silver bracelet engraved with his initials. Nathaniel, exhausted from work, accepted it with a weary nod, but Ivy saw more. A slip of paper tucked beneath the tissue wrapping. When Vivienne wasn't looking, Ivy caught a glimpse of the words, "Custody hearing." Her stomach dropped. Later, as she dusted near the nursery, she overheard Cecilia humming, not a lullaby, but a tune Ivy didn't recognize. Her voice was low, calculated. Noah whimpered in her arms, arching away, his tiny fists pushing against her chest. "I don't think he likes you," Ivy said softly, stepping into the room. Cecilia turned, her smile mechanical. Babies adjust, but Noah's cries only grew louder. Ivy reached out. "Let me." For a heartbeat, Cecilia didn't move. Then slowly she handed the baby over. Noah clung to Ivy instantly, his sobs fading. Cecilia's eyes narrowed, her smile never faltering. "Sure, you've grown attached." Ivy hugged Noah close. "Someone has to." The words hung heavy in the air. That night, Ivy couldn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling, hearing Cecilia's whispers over and over. "The baby will be ours to move." The words wrapped around her chest like a vice. She knew, without a shadow of doubt, that Vivienne was plotting to take Noah, to steal him away under the guise of legality, or worse, and Ivy, a maid with nothing but her courage, was the only one who knew. Her decision crystallized. She couldn't stay silent. She would protect Noah, even if it meant standing against people far more powerful than herself. But she also knew that to fight them, she needed proof. Something undeniable. So the next morning, when Cecilia left her phone unattended on the counter, Ivy's fingers itched. She glanced around, her heart hammering. The screen lit up with a message: "Tomorrow, 3:00 p.m., back gate." "Be ready." Ivy's blood ran cold. She now had the first piece of the puzzle. But if she wasn't careful, she might not live long enough to put it all together. The next day arrived cloaked in a strange quiet, as if the mansion itself knew something was coming. Ivy barely tasted her breakfast. Her eyes darted constantly toward the clock on the wall. Each tick sounded louder than the last. 3:00. That was the time she had seen on Cecilia's phone. That was the moment something would happen. By noon, Vivienne appeared, not through the front gates with her usual spectacle, but slipping in through the side entrance, as if she belonged in the shadows. She wore sunglasses, though the hallways were dim, her lips painted crimson. "Nathaniel's in his meeting?" she asked, her voice silky. Cecilia, standing stiff in the foyer, gave a subtle nod. "Yes," Cecilia replied. "He won't be disturbed." Ivy, hidden behind the laundry room door, pressed her palm against her mouth. Her heartbeat pounded like a drum. She wanted to storm out, to scream for Nathaniel, but she knew if she confronted them too soon they would twist it against her. She needed to see what they would do. The hours crawled. At 2:45, Cecilia carried Noah toward the back of the mansion. The baby whined in her arms, his small fists clutching at her blouse. "Hush," Cecilia whispered coldly. "This is for the best." Ivy trailed behind at a distance, her nerves stretched to breaking. She could see through the wide kitchen windows, the path leading to the iron-back gate lined with towering oaks. Beyond it, a sleek black car idled, its windows tinted, engine low and purring. Vivian stood near the gate, her sunglasses gone now, revealing eyes alight with triumph. She reached out her arms as Cecilia approached. "Finally," she whispered, "my family is whole again. No." The word tore from Ivy's throat before she realized she'd stepped outside. Vivian's head snapped toward her, fury flashing across her perfect face. "Stay out of this, girl." Cecilia hesitated, glancing between them. For a fraction of a second, the silence felt eternal. Then Noah began to cry, a shrill, terrified wail that shattered the moment. He reached toward Ivy, his tiny arms trembling. "Give him to me," Ivy demanded, her voice stronger than she felt. She stepped forward, fists clenched. "He doesn't want you. He doesn't even know you. You left him when he needed you most." Vivian sneered, her lips curling. "What do you know about need? About sacrifice? You're just the help, replaceable, forgettable." But her voice cracked just slightly when Noah's cries grew louder, straining toward Ivy. Cecilia's expression faltered, her grip loosening. For the first time, doubt flickered in her eyes. "Cecilia, don't you dare," Vivian hissed. Ivy moved closer, her own voice trembling with both fear and fire. "Look at him. He doesn't stop crying in your arms because he knows. Babies know who loves them. You're not protecting him, you're stealing him." Cecilia's jaw tightened. She shifted her weight, almost as if to pass the baby into Vivian's arms. But Ivy lunged. In one desperate motion, she wrenched Noah free, clutching him against her chest as he buried his wet face into her shoulder. Vivian shrieked, the sound sharp and animalistic. "You'll regret this." The black car door flew open. A man in a dark suit stepped out, moving quickly toward them. Ivy stumbled back, fear surging through her veins, but her grip on Noah never wavered, and then, "What the hell is going on?" Nathaniel's voice thundered across the yard. He strode toward them from the side path, his eyes blazing. Behind him, one of the security guards jogged to keep up. Vivian's mask slipped instantly, her fury replaced by practiced sweetness. "Nathaniel, thank God you're here. The maid has lost her mind. She tried to steal Noah. She's lying." Ivy gasped, tears stinging her eyes. They were handing him over to that car. "I swear it, I heard their plan." "Enough!" Nathaniel roared, his gaze snapping to Cecilia. "Is this true?" Cecilia's lips parted, but no sound came. The silence betrayed her more than words ever could. Nathaniel's face hardened. "You're finished. Both of you." Vivian's smile curdled. "You think you can erase me? You'll see me again in court. This isn't over, Nathaniel." She turned sharply, signaling to the driver. The black car door slammed, and in seconds it disappeared down the long drive. Cecilia stood frozen, her face drained of color, until security grabbed her by the arm and escorted her off the property. Ivy clutched Noah tighter, her whole body trembling. Nathaniel turned to her, his expression torn between rage and relief. "You saved him," he said quietly, his voice breaking just enough to betray the truth. Ivy met his eyes, her heart pounding. Someone had to. And in that moment, with the scent of magnolia in the air and danger still lingering like smoke, something undeniable passed between them, an unspoken promise. But neither knew the storm was only beginning, because Vivian was not a woman who accepted defeat. She had wealth. She had influence. And now she had a new weapon, the law. The mansion should have felt safe again after that confrontation. The gates closed, Cecilia was escorted out, and Vivian had driven off with her threats echoing like a storm fading into the horizon. But safety in Charleston's high society was never about locked doors. It was about reputation. And Vivian knew exactly how to strike where Nathaniel Brooks was most vulnerable. The morning headlines arrived like daggers. Prominent Charleston CEO accused of negligence, child endangered in custody dispute. Ex-fiancée raises concerns over baby's care in Brooks' estate. Nathaniel gripped the newspaper at the breakfast table until the pages crumpled. Ivy, standing near the counter with Noah balanced on her hip, felt her stomach churn as she read over his shoulder. The article painted Vivienne as the concerned former fiancé, bravely stepping forward to protect a child left to a maid with no qualifications. Ivy's name was there, her name, in print. They called her unfit, irresponsible, even dangerous. Her throat tightened. This isn't true. They're lying about me." Nathaniel's jaw clenched, his eyes like steel. Vivian has money, influence. Half the city council dines with her family. He slammed the paper down. She's making this about you so she can get to me. But it wasn't only the newspapers. That afternoon, Ivy's phone buzzed with messages from neighbors, acquaintances, even strangers. Some pitied her. Others accused her of being a gold digger, of using the child to worm her way into Nathaniel's home. The cruelest words were the ones about her siblings, Leo and Maya, dragged into gossip blogs, their photos pulled from social media. Unstable family background, the captions read. Ivy's hands shook so hard she dropped the phone. They're dragging my brother and sister into this. They're just kids. Nathaniel's voice softened, but his fury simmered beneath. I'll protect them. They'll protect you. But even as he spoke, his phone rang. His attorney, Victor Hale, demanded he attend an emergency hearing. Custody petitions had been filed. Vivian was leveraging legal documents Ivy had glimpsed days earlier, turning whispers into official claims. The courtroom 2 days later was a theater of masks. Vivian swept in with her team of lawyers, her dress immaculate, her crocodile tears perfectly timed. Cecilia was there too, shockingly, dressed in conservative grey, claiming she had been misled by Ivy, pressured into helping the maid overstep boundaries. Ivy sat beside Nathaniel, her hands folded tightly in her lap, every muscle tense. She wasn't meant for courtrooms. She was meant for kitchens, nurseries, sidewalks where children played. The marble floors and polished oak benches suffocated her. But when the judge looked at her, she lifted her chin. Vivian's voice rang out across the chamber, dripping with false sincerity. I only want what's best for Noah. Nathaniel has been overwhelmed since Hannah's passing. He's allowed a maid, a girl with no education, no license, to make decisions for his child. This is reckless, even dangerous. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Cameras flashed. The judge scribbled notes. Ivy's heart pounded. She wanted to stand, to scream that Vivian had planned to steal Noah, that Cecilia had spoken of backgates and black cars. But she had no evidence, just her word against theirs. Nathaniel rose, his voice steady but edged with fire. Vivian abandoned us. She left when I needed her most, when Noah needed her. And this maid she insults? Ivy saved my son's life. She has done more for him in weeks than Vivian ever did in years. Vivian's eyes flashed with cold rage, though her lips stayed curved in a saintly smile. Or perhaps she saved him because she endangered him in the first place. The blow landed hard. Ivy's eyes filled with tears, her body trembling. She looked at Nathaniel, but for the first time she saw doubt flicker in his face, not in her, but in the power of the room they stood in. Here, truth didn't always matter. Power did. The gavel struck. The judge announced a temporary review of custody, further hearings scheduled. Vivian's team smiled, satisfied. That night, back in the mansion, Ivy sat alone in the nursery. Noah's tiny hand curled around her finger, his eyes heavy with sleep. She whispered, her voice breaking. I won't let her take you. Even if I have to stand against the whole world, I won't let her win. In the hallway, Nathaniel watched her, silent. His chest ached, not only with fear of losing his son, but with something he hadn't felt since Hannah's death. A stirring of faith, of trust, of connection. Ivy wasn't just the maid. She was the one person standing between him and ruin, but what neither of them knew was that Vivian had already prepared her next strike. Not with lawyers this time, with shadows, with secrets buried deep in Nathaniel's past, waiting to be weaponized. The storm wasn't subsiding. It was just beginning to roar. Charleston's summer air was thick, heavy with humidity, but inside the Brooks mansion the weight pressing down had nothing to do with the weather. Ivy could feel it in every glance, every phone call Nathaniel took in hushed tones, every envelope that arrived at the front gates with no return address. Vivian's attack had shifted. The newspapers weren't enough, the courtroom not fast enough. Now she struck where Nathaniel was weakest, his past. It began with whispers. A blog post leaked late at night. Millionaire Nathaniel Brooks hid bankruptcy scandal in his early career. By morning, the story spread like wildfire. Reporters swarmed the estate, cameras flashing at the gates. Nathaniel stormed into his office, slamming the door so hard the walls trembled. Ivy hovered near the kitchen, Noah balanced against her chest. She overheard his muffled words through the door. That case was sealed. Nobody should have had access to those records. Her stomach twisted. She remembered Cecilia's phone, the cryptic messages and the name that surfaced in court. Jeremy Miles, a young hacker who once worked for a financial firm in Atlanta. Vivian had bought him, bought his bitterness, and now Nathaniel's private sins were public currency. That night, Ivy found him in the study, his tie discarded, his hands buried in his hair. On the desk lay documents, photos, proof twisted into daggers. She placed Noah gently in his crib and stood beside him. "They're lies," she said softly. Nathaniel's laugh was hollow. "They're not lies, Ivy. When I was 25, my company almost collapsed. I signed papers I shouldn't have. Deals with men I should have walked away from. If the truth had come out then, I would have lost everything. My father's name, my mother's house, all gone." He looked up at her, his eyes raw. "Vivian knows that. She'll drag it all into court. She'll say I'm unfit, dishonest. And they'll believe her." Ivy's heart clenched. She wanted to reach out, to lay her hand over his, but she stopped herself. She was just the maid. Just Ivy Collins, a girl with no money, no title. Yet her voice came firm. "The truth doesn't make you unfit. It makes you human. And Noah doesn't need perfection, he needs protection." For a moment, silence. Then Nathaniel whispered, "Why are you the only one who understands?" Their eyes locked, lingering too long, until Noah stirred in his crib and broke the moment. Ivy stepped back quickly, her face warm, her chest tight. The next day, Vivian escalated further. A private investigator, Hector Figueroa, a man once respected in law enforcement, now worked for her. He prowled through Ivy's neighborhood, snapping photos of her siblings, digging into their school records, even cornering her brother Leo outside the grocery store. "You don't know who you're living with," Hector muttered, slipping a card into the boy's hand. "Tell your sister to step aside before she ruins you all." Leo told Ivy everything that night, his voice shaking. He said, "You're messing with people who could bury us." Ivy pulled him close, her heart pounding. "I won't let them touch you or Maya, I swear it." But she knew Vivian's tactics were working. Fear seeped into every corner. Nathaniel's investors called daily, questioning his stability. Board members whispered about replacing him. Neighbors who once admired the Brooks estate now crossed the street, whispering about the Maid scandal. And still Vivian pressed forward. One evening, Ivy crept past Cecilia's old quarters, now empty, and found an envelope slipped under the door. She opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a photograph, grainy, black and white. Nathaniel at 25, shaking hands with a man notorious for laundering money through offshore accounts. On the back, written in sharp ink, "Is this the man you trust with your child?" Her blood ran cold. She knew this wasn't about truth. It was about destruction. Vivian wanted to strip Nathaniel of his name, his company, his son, until nothing remained but her shadow standing victorious. That night, Ivy sat by the window with Noah asleep in her arms. She whispered into the quiet, more to herself than anyone, "If she wants war, then she'll have to face me too." In the darkness beyond the magnolia trees, headlights flickered. A car sat waiting, engine humming, just out of reach of the gate lights. Watching. Always watching. The storm was tightening, and Ivy, though trembling, was no longer just the maid. She was becoming the line Vivian could not cross. The rain fell hard that Friday evening, battering against the tall windows of the Brooks mansion like 1,000 tiny fists. Inside, the storm was mirrored in Nathaniel's restless pacing. He had just returned from a tense board meeting where whispers of resignation and liability filled the air like poison. Vivian's smear campaign was working. Ivy sensed it too. She lingered near Noah's nursery, humming softly while folding his tiny clothes. Her instincts told her something darker was on the horizon. She could almost feel Vivian's presence, like a ghost pressing against the walls of the house. At 9 o'clock, Nathaniel insisted on driving into Charleston. "I need to speak to Edward Klein in person. He's wavering on his vote. If I lose him, I lose the company." "I'll come with you," Ivy said quickly. Nathaniel shook his head. "No, it's too dangerous out there. Stay with Noah." But Ivy's jaw tightened. "I don't trust what's happening lately." "Let me come, please," he hesitated, then relented. Within minutes, Noah was safe with a trusted nanny for the evening. And the two of them set out in Nathaniel's sleek black Mercedes. The storm still raging. The city roads were nearly empty, slick with water, neon signs flickering through the rain. Nathaniel kept his eyes forward, his hands gripping the wheel, his thoughts racing with strategies and fears. Ivy watched him, sensing his exhaustion, the weight of battles no one else could see. She longed to tell him she believed in him, that no amount of secrets from his past could erase the man she had come to know. But before she could speak, headlights exploded in the rearview mirror. A pickup truck, dark and unmarked, surged behind them. It tailed close, too close, its beams blinding. Nathaniel frowned. That's odd. Roads are empty tonight. The truck accelerated, ramming the back of the Mercedes with brutal force. Ivy screamed as the car lurched forward. Nathaniel fought the wheel, knuckles white. Hold on. Another slam. Metal screeched. Tires slipped on the rain-slick asphalt. Ivy's heart pounded so loud she thought it might burst. They're trying to push us off the road, Nathaniel shouted. The truck veered left, then right, corralling them toward the guardrail. Ivy's instincts surged. Nathaniel, the side street. Take it now. He jerked the wheel, swerving down a narrow, unlit road lined with oaks. The truck followed, relentless. Ivy could see the driver's outline. Broad shoulders, cap pulled low. A hired hand. One of Vivian's. The road curved sharply near the river. The truck sped up, ready to deliver the final blow. Ivy's eyes widened. If they hit the railing, the Mercedes would plunge into the swollen waters below. Brake hard! She screamed. Nathaniel slammed the brakes. The Mercedes fishtailed violently, spinning sideways across the wet road. The truck overshot, skidding past them, barely missing the curve. It plowed into the guardrail with a thunderous crash, teetered for a heartbeat, then toppled nose first into the river. Silence, except for the rain. Both of them sat frozen, breaths ragged. Ivy's chest heaved as she clutched the dashboard. Nathaniel gripped the wheel, his pulse thundering. Finally he rasped, "That wasn't an accident." "No," Ivy whispered, trembling. That was Vivian. Blue lights flared in the distance. Police cars, too quickly, too perfectly timed. Within minutes, officers surrounded them, asking questions, while a tow truck's beams illuminated the riverbank where the pickup had sunk. No driver was recovered. Whether drowned or vanished into the storm, no one could say. Nathaniel gave his statement, his voice taut with controlled rage. Ivy stood beside him, drenched and shivering, but her eyes blazed with clarity. "She won't stop, Nathaniel. Not until she destroys you, or me." Back at the mansion, drenched clothes clinging to their skin, Ivy finally collapsed into the kitchen chair. Her hands shook so hard she could barely hold a towel. Nathaniel knelt before her, his hand covering hers. "You saved us tonight," he murmured. "If you hadn't told me to break—" His voice cracked, but he steadied it. "I can't lose you, Ivy, not you. Not Noah." The words hung heavy, electric, too raw to ignore. Ivy wanted to deny them, to dismiss them as fear-talking. But deep down she knew. They were true. And in the shadows of her room later that night, as she listened to Noah's soft breathing in the nursery, Ivy whispered a prayer. Not just for protection, but for strength. Because Vivian had escalated from manipulation to violence, and the next move could be fatal. The storm passed, but the unease lingered like smoke that refused to clear. Days after the ambush on the river road, the Brooks mansion seemed quiet on the surface. But Ivy felt every creak of the old wood, every flicker of the lights, every shadow moving in the hallway at night. Vivian's presence was like a cold wind pressing against the windows, out of sight, yet always there. Nathaniel grew more withdrawn. Though his resolve was iron, he worked with investigators, handed over security footage, and spoke with police chiefs who owed him favors. "She's crossing lines even her family can't cover," he told Ivy one night. "It's only a matter of time before she falls," but Ivy's instincts whispered otherwise. Vivian was not just reckless, she was cunning. And cunning enemies didn't simply wait for the law to catch up. They struck where it hurt most. One Wednesday evening, Ivy was returning from the kitchen when she noticed something odd. The door to Nathaniel's private study ajar. He never left it that way. She approached quietly and heard voices. One was Nathaniel's, tired and firm. The other, unfamiliar, male. "You said you could handle this," the stranger said, his tone sharp. "I told you I'm doing my job," came the reply. Ivy froze. That second voice wasn't Nathaniel's. It was Victor Hale, the lawyer known for his slick tongue and hidden loyalties. But why was he here in Nathaniel's study, speaking after dark? The words made her blood run cold. "Vivian doesn't want him ruined," Hale whispered. "She wants him broken. And she'll use that maid to do it." Ivy stumbled back, her heart thundering, nearly knocking over a vase on the console table. She pressed a hand to her mouth. He's inside the house. The enemy wasn't only outside, it had already slithered through the front door. The next morning, Nathaniel seemed troubled, but said nothing of the late-night meeting. Ivy debated telling him what she'd heard, but fear gnawed at her. What if he doubted her? What if he thought it was paranoia? She had no proof, just a shadow of a conversation. 2 nights later, the betrayal became clear. Noah's wails shattered the midnight silence. Ivy rushed to his nursery only to find the crib empty. For a terrifying second, her breath caught in her throat. Then she heard muffled cries down the hall. She followed the sound, heart hammering, and froze. Cecilia Crane, Vivian's discarded accomplice, supposedly in custody, was standing in the dim hallway holding Noah. Her face was pale, her eyes wild, her hands trembling as she bounced the baby. How did you get in?" Ivy gasped, her legs nearly giving out. Cecilia sneered. "Money buys many things, freedom, access, second chances." She looked at Noah like he was a bargaining chip, not a child. Before Ivy could scream, Victor Hale stepped from the shadows. "Don't be foolish," he warned coldly. "If you want the child back unharmed, you'll play along." Nathaniel burst from his room at the noise, his hair disheveled, his eyes burning with fury. "Put him down," he roared. Cecilia clutched Noah tighter. "One more step and the baby gets hurt." The standoff stretched taut as a wire. Ivy's chest heaved, her body shaking, but she forced herself forward. Her voice softened, trembling yet steady enough to cut through the chaos. "Cecilia," she said gently, "remember what you told me once, about needing money, about being desperate. I listened to you. I didn't judge. But this isn't you. You don't want to hurt him." For a flicker of a moment, Cecilia's grip faltered. Ivy took a slow step closer, hands open. "Look at him. He's just a baby. He never wronged you. If you walk away now, there's still a chance for mercy," Victor hissed. "Don't listen to her." Vivian promised, but Ivy cut him off, her voice like steel. "Vivian promised you both nothing but ruin. She'll throw you away again, just like before. You know it." Cecilia's eyes darted between Ivy and Nathaniel. Noah whimpered in her arms, reaching tiny fists toward Ivy. Something in that gesture broke whatever thin armor she had left. With a sob, Cecilia thrust the baby toward Ivy. Ivy grabbed him, clutching Noah tight against her chest, tears spilling down her cheeks. Victor's face twisted with rage. "You fool," he spat at Cecilia. "You've doomed us both." But Nathaniel was already moving. In one swift motion, he tackled Victor to the ground, the sound of bone hitting hardwood echoing through the hall. The guards, alerted by the noise, stormed in seconds later, dragging Victor away while Cecilia collapsed against the wall, shaking, broken. Holding Noah close, Ivy whispered into his ear, "You're safe, my love. You're safe." Nathaniel rose, bruised but standing, his gaze locked on Ivy, on Noah, on the fragile circle of life they almost lost again. As dawn broke over Charleston, the betrayal had been exposed. Vivian's web of influence was crumbling, her allies turning to dust. But Ivy knew the war wasn't over. Vivian had played her most dangerous card, turning people from inside the house, and if she could buy lawyers and free accomplices, what would she be willing to pay for next? The Brooks mansion felt like a fortress under siege. Guards patrolled the gates, cameras glowed red from every corner, and the staff moved in hushed tones, sensing danger in every shadow. Yet despite the heightened security, Ivy couldn't shake the gnawing dread that Vivian still had one last move to play. Nathaniel, bruised from his fight with Victor Hale, refused to leave Ivy and Noah's side. He was no longer just the hardened businessman. He was a man who had almost lost everything, and the fear of that loss lit a fire in his veins. 2 days after the attempted kidnapping inside his home, the call came. It wasn't from the police or the press. It was from Vivian herself. Nathaniel's phone rang at midnight. The number was blocked. He hesitated, then answered. Her voice slithered through the line, smooth as glass, sharp as a blade. "You think you've won?" You haven't even begun to understand what I'm capable of. Nathaniel's jaw clenched. You've already destroyed yourself, Vivian. There's nothing left for you but prison. A low laugh answered him. Prison is temporary. Power is forever. Meet me tomorrow at Raven's Point, alone, or the world will see secrets about you that will make you wish you'd never been born. The line went dead. Nathaniel's fists trembled. She won't stop until I end this, he muttered. Ivy placed a hand on his arm, her eyes fierce. Then you're not going alone. If she wants to end it, she'll face both of us. Raven's Point was an abandoned pier south of Charleston, a place where the river met the ocean, where the salt wind cut through the bones. Nathaniel drove there at dawn, Ivy beside him, Noah safe at the mansion with trusted guards. The place was eerily quiet, gulls crying overhead, waves crashing against the rotting wood. Vivian stood at the end of the pier, a long black coat whipping in the wind, her blonde hair pinned back, her smile cold. So the maid comes too, she sneered, her eyes narrowing on Ivy. Fitting. The little servant girl who stole everything from me. You lost Nathaniel long before I came, Ivy said, her voice steady despite the pounding of her heart. So you lost him the moment you chose control over love. Vivian's eyes flashed. You think you're better than me. You're nothing. Without him, you're just a cleaning girl with calloused hands and cheap dreams. Nathaniel stepped forward, his voice rising above the storm. Stop it, Vivian. You ruined yourself. You tried to steal my son, smear the only innocent person who ever stood by me. And now you think blackmail will save you? It ends here. Vivian pulled a small flash drive from her coat pocket, dangling it between her fingers. On this, every skeleton you've hidden, Nathaniel. Deals your company made, bribes your board covered up. Once it leaks, you'll be finished. All it takes is one click. Nathaniel's stomach tightened. He knew what she said was partly true. Mistakes of the past, desperate decisions made in grief and survival. But before he could speak, Ivy stepped forward. Vivian, she said softly, look at yourself. This isn't power. This is desperation. You've already lost. You're standing here with nothing left but threats and lies. You call me nothing, but I have something you'll never have. Love, faith, and a family that fights for each other. You'll never destroy that. Vivian's face twisted with fury. Then I'll destroy you. She raised her hand and in it gleamed a pistol, black and terrible against the pale dawn. Time slowed. Nathaniel lunged forward. Ivy gasped, her eyes wide. But before the shot rang out, a voice boomed from behind them. Drop the weapon, Vivian. Floodlights cut through the fog. Police surged onto the pier, guns raised. Jack Figueroa, the private investigator, strode at the front, his coat flapping in the wind. Vivian froze, caught in the glare of justice. We have enough evidence to bury you for life, Figueroa growled. Kidnapping, conspiracy, attempted murder, blackmail. You're done. Her hands shook, the gun wavering. For a breathless moment, Ivy thought she might fire anyway, ending everything in one desperate blaze. But then Vivian screamed, a sound more animal than human, and hurled the gun into the sea. She collapsed to her knees, sobbing as the police closed in, shackling her wrists. Nathaniel pulled Ivy into his arms, trembling with the adrenaline of survival. It's over, he whispered against her hair. Finally over, but Ivy shook her head gently. No, Nathaniel, it's just the beginning. Months later, the trial made headlines across the nation. Heiress sentenced to 30 years, the papers declared. Vivian's empire crumbled. Her family disowned her, her name forever tainted. Nathaniel stepped down from his company, selling it to a rival firm, determined to start fresh. With the wealth from the sale, he bought a quiet home near the river. Not a mansion, but a house filled with light, laughter, and the smell of fresh-baked bread. Ivy pursued her dream of becoming a nurse, studying by night, working by day, while Nathaniel took joy in raising Noah without the constant shadow of loss. Their love grew not in grand gestures, but in the small moments. Shared meals, Noah's giggles, Ivy's tired smile after a long shift, Nathaniel's hand resting gently over hers as they sat together on the porch. One evening, as the sun bled gold across the horizon, Nathaniel turned to her with tears in his eyes. You saved me, Ivy. Not just from Vivian, not just from fear. You saved me from myself. Ivy leaned into him, her voice a whisper of truth. And you saved me from believing I wasn't enough. Noah toddled between them, laughing, his small hands reaching for both of theirs. And in that simple moment they knew. Their story, once filled with betrayal and darkness, had transformed into something greater than either of them had ever imagined. Love, redemption, family. And that was the true victory.